Good morning and welcome to everybody to this first plenary session of the LIFE Clean Energy Transition call for the Info Day for the Call of Proposals 2023. I am Maria Laguna. I'm Head of Sector at CENEA, working with the Clean Energy Transition Program. And you will have in this first plenary session the opportunity to get an update on the recent policy developments at the EU level on energy policy. Also, you will get an overview of the main elements and the specific characteristics of the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Subprogram, which is a bit different from a traditional LIFE program. And you will hear also from colleagues on tips on how to make an excellent proposal, and also some tips on how to deal with administrative and financial issues of a LIFE Clean Energy Transition project. After this plenary session, well, you will have an helicopter view on the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Subprograms and the Call 2023 for proposals. You will also have the opportunity to have we have in the program 8 plenary sessions. And you will have the opportunity to hear from colleagues. We have more than 20 colleagues working on the LIFE Clean Energy Transition that will be presenting to you the specific details of the topics that are open in this 2023 call. So I will also welcome you to join after for the specific parallel sessions. You have the opportunity to interact with us through Slido. So you can send your questions. So for this, you will need, if you have never used a Slido before, you will need to go to slido.com and then enter the event code. The event code is #EULIFE23, or use the QR code that you have on the screen, and then select the corresponding room. So for this session will be the plenary session room. And you can post your question there, and you can also vote for the questions that you think they are most relevant. And we will have the opportunity to have some time for a question and answer sessions at the end of the presentations. So basically, this is what you have for this plenary meeting today, what we have prepared for you. I hope you will find it interesting. And with further ado, I pass the floor to Aneta WILLEMS, which is the head of department responsible for the LIFE program at CENEA, for some welcome remarks. So Aneta, please, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the introduction. And dear participants, dear colleagues, good morning to all. It's my pleasure to be here with you virtually today. My name is Aneta WILLEMS, like Maria said. Since October last year, I'm the head of department for natural resources, climate, sustainable blue economy, and clean energy in the European Climate, Infrastructure, and Environment Executive Agency. So in short, we call it CENEA. CENEA is one of 6 executive agencies of the European Commission, and it's managing 7 different funding programs dedicated to the activities and policies of 7 directorates generals in the Commission. And we work with more than 500 staff, and total budget that is delegated to us for the period of 2021-2027 is more than 65 billion euro. The mentioned 7 programs that CENEA manages are the Innovation Fund for Climate Change, Horizon Europe in Research and Innovation areas, Connecting Europe Facility in the fields of energy and transport, Renewable Energy Financing Mechanism, Just Transition Mechanism, European Maritime Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, and the reason we meet here today, the LIFE program. And you will quickly understand that with such focus on climate, environment, energy, and mobility sectors, CENEA is ideally placed to reinforce the dialogue among them, to capitalize on synergies and achieve the highest impacts for the greener Europe. Therefore, in CENEA, we identify and call ourselves the Green Deal Agency. With this clear mission to contribute to a sustainable, climate neutral and resilient economy and reversing the loss of biodiversity, LIFE is the key instrument to deliver on the ambitions of the European Green Deal. And today you will have the chance to meet and directly interact with my colleagues who are involved on a daily basis in our LIFE clean energy transition activities. And these projects turn policy into action This means that they help implement policies, for example, by creating favorable regulatory and market conditions for innovative approaches and products, by building capacity, enabling change and exchanges, and by mobilizing investment or by empowering consumers. You will discover much more about the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Program today, and I will not go into further details as this would take too much time. And you are in the great hands of my competent colleagues, but I invite you to visit our CINEA website, on which you can find many more details of the programs and next calls and project stories. I also want to highlight how well CINEA and our department are connected with our parent DGs, notably with DG Energy, who are with us today and will actively participate in this meeting. This shows how close our program is to the policy and how important it is, as I said before, to turn policy into action. So in this place, I want to thank our colleagues from DG Energy for supporting us today. I also want to invite you to visit our online public dashboard, which was recently launched by CINEA. This tool allows everyone to find information about projects supported by the agency, and it offers, for example, data visualizations, maps, and graphs. And I invite you also to interact with this platform to discover projects data in real time. At the end of April, the Live Info Days focusing on the sub-programs for nature and biodiversity, circular economy, and quality of life, as well as climate change mitigation and adaptation, took already place. Today, the Info Day will focus on the sub-program for the clean energy transition, or in short, CET or CET. And its 13 funding priorities for the 2023 call for proposals. And for those, we have a budget of around 100 million euro available. The call opened on the 11th of May and will close on the 16th of May. And I would like to draw your attention to the fact that soon we will post the recordings and presentations of today's Info Day on CINEA's website. So please also remember that tomorrow it will be possible to set up one-to-one meetings with other interesting applicants through the B2Match platform. And this is an opportunity to get in touch with other organizations across Europe and maybe to set up a good consortium for a successful project. So for all sessions today, I would like to stress, like Maria said, that you have the opportunity to raise questions through Slido. So please use this possibility, and the moderators will explain how to do it. So with this, let me end and thank you for your attention. And I hereby wish you all interesting Info Day, and above all, good luck with the preparations of your proposals. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Aneta, for these welcome remarks. Just a clarification from my side. The deadline is 16th of November, not May. 16th of November. Yes.
Yes, November. Apologies.
Thanks a lot. And with further ado, I pass the floor to Pierluca MEROLA from DG Energy. He is a policy officer working on the energy efficiency unit, and he will give us an overview of the more recent policy developments at the EU level on energy policy and how they are in line with the call topics that we have drafted for the call 2023. Thanks, Pierluca. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Maria, and welcome to everyone, to all the participants, to the already participant that have proposed project to us, or new one, or prospective one. From the general side, as just a few introductory words, I will drive you through the energy policy update, basically the energy policies that inform the preparation of the LIFE Clean Energy Transition subprogram and draft topics. But in general, one mentioned, as remembered also by Aneta, one key element of LIFE, of the LIFE program and the LIFE Clean Energy Transition specifically, is the closeness with the parent DG, with the policy development and policy implementation. And that is also why you will hear today in the different parallel session from my colleagues from DG Ener, so and also the way with our colleagues in CINEA, the feedback input from the project that you are leading or you are preparing to the policy development, and they are closely associated with us in making sure that that the project we implement can really help also in shaping, let's say, the EU energy policy. This is just to say the importance, let's say, of your work if you wish to apply, and of your proposal, not only to be successful and to have a nice project, but also to support the European Commission and the European Union to deliver on its clean energy ambition and decarbonization targets. So with that, we can briefly start. I will not recall you too much the overall political context. I know you know it very well, but what is important to mention is that when we started, when this current commission, the Commission von der Leyen, started, the key priority that was put forward was the European Green Deal. You know that very well. There is a need to change pace, to increase our ambition, and to scale up in general effort, action, innovative solution in order to deliver if we really want to become climate neutral by 2050. The European Green Deal was underpinned by the Climate Target Plan, a landmark impact assessment on what is needed to deliver on the objective to reduce by 55% the greenhouse gas emission by 2030. And this was enshrined in the European Climate Law, where the member states have subscribed to this binding objective. Next to it, we have, in order to make this happen, in the different sector, we have came forward with the Fit for 55, which is a legislative package, where today I will present you the part related to clean energy specifically of this legislative package, and where we are in terms of revision of the current framework and new objective or new tools that then you will see repeated in the different topics that will be presented to you today. Finally, do not forget the big effort and ambition that we have put forward with the renovation wave, where we identified in buildings and in particular in residential sector, a key sector where to step up effort, both to reduce energy consumption, deploy renewable, and overall reduce greenhouse gas emissions. If we can move to the next slide. I still don't see it, but maybe it's there. Yes, thank you very much. As said, I mean, if on one side, when the Commission von der Leyen and the objective of the European Green Deal was set forward, this was, I mean, very well planned and expected, and a strategic objective for the European Union. On the other side, one unexpected development was, as you know, represented by the aggression from Russia to Ukraine and the following energy crisis, both an energy crisis in terms of risk of supply disruption, but also in terms of disruption of the market overall and high energy prices. This is why the European Commission and DG Ener came forward with the REPowerEU plan, which is a detailed plan to phase out the dependence from Russian fossil fuel by 2027, and has three legs in particular: the need to step up and increase energy efficiency and generate more energy saving, the need to accelerate on the clean energy deployment on renewables and other solutions to phase out fossil fuels, and the diversification of energy supply. These have come forward also with a number of legislative proposals, including an increase in the proposed target for the Energy Efficiency Directive and Renewable Energy Directive. If we can move to the next slide. indeed, the revision of the energy efficiency directive. So I said there is three key, let's say, directives that inform the work of the LIFE Clean Energy Transition Subprogram, and in general, let's say, our clean energy legislative framework. These are the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Renewable Energy Directive, and the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive. The Energy Efficiency Directive now is still in interinstitutional negotiation, as we say in jargon, is provisionally agreed, in the sense that an agreement was reached between the European Parliament and the Council and the Member State on the Energy Efficiency Directive. This agreement, what are the key elements that I will present to you, is an increased target, of course, for energy efficiency, for the EU to reduce its primary and final energy consumption by 11.7% by 2030. This is compared to the reference scenarios of 2020, and represent an increase compared to the initial Commission proposal before the REPowerEU and the Russian aggression to Ukraine of that was 9%. Then we have strengthened the national energy saving obligation. This is the legal basis for the energy saving obligation schemes and white certificate schemes in the different member states to 1.49% in average of final energy saving in end user, with a stepwise approach, in the sense that this will move from 0.8 till 1.99 in the course of till 2030. We have introduced reinforced, because it was already introduced in the governance regulation, reinforced the energy efficiency first principle across the different sector. Here the basic we will come back also with additional guidelines in detail, and here the basic element is that whenever we plan or make investment plan or planning in terms of clean energy, that first of all we should assess if there is the possibility to optimize our energy consumption and generate savings. Then we have updated the very important the definition of energy efficient district heating and cooling, or if there will be a topic specific for district heating, you will hear more about during the day. And we have now a trajectory for the efficient district heating and cooling till 2050. Also with regard to energy audit and energy efficiency in the business sector, the threshold for mandatory energy audit and energy management system for enterprise has been revised. And finally, we have also other very important obligations stemming from the ED. We have increased the exemplary the requirement on the public authority for the exemplary from the public sector. Other elements regard the financing and the mobilization of private investment, but also the support to one-stop shop and to energy poverty and vulnerable consumer. If we can move to the next slide. With regard to the Renewable Energy Directive, also here we have let's say the process is almost finalized in the framework of the negotiation. We have a provisional agreement on the overall targets and on different sectorial target. The main the headline target in this case would be 42.5% of renewable share by 2030. This is an important increase in line. And actually, also in this case, there is an increase in ambition compared to our initial 55 proposal, and that was of 40%. And then we have detailed sectoral target with a mix of indicative and binding one with regard to heating and cooling, transport, industry, and buildings. Finally, what is very, very important in this framework is also the role that increase permitting procedures need to play in order to scale up the deployment of renewables in Europe. The two principles have been introduced, two tools have been introduced in the Renewable Energy Directive: the principle of overriding public interest and the need to identify go-to areas for renewable deployment. Finally, what is also important, also in a cross-sectoral perspective with regard to LIFE, is the introduction and reinforcement of the sustainable bioenergy criteria in line with the EU biodiversity strategy, that we should ensure the application also that for smaller scale installation with regard to biomass and relevant biofuel and bioenergy. With that, we can move to the next slide, please, on the energy performance of building directive. Here, the process, it is important to recall compared to the ED and RED that were, we say, published by the Commission, adopted by the College of the Commissioner as a proposal on July 2021. In the case of the EPBD, the Energy Performance of Building Directive, this was presented in December 2021. And in terms of process, we are now beginning the start of the trialogues. The trialogues are the interinstitutional negotiation between the Parliament and the Council. Once the Parliament and the Council has indeed, as it happened, already adopted their respective position regarding the revision of this directive. In this case, I will highlight the main reform. Some of the key elements, one of the key elements actually, regarding the introduction of minimum energy performance standards for buildings. This should trigger building renovation whenever at different threshold in time to ensure that we start to renovate, in particular as a priority, worst performing buildings. Next to that, there are a number of also supporting measures to scale up building renovation, from the development of new tools like a building renovation passport to the harmonization of the methodology for the definition of the energy performance classes for building and energy performance certificates. In this case, we realize that we need to move forward in terms of harmonization across member states, because also to allow cross-country comparability for investment purpose as well, to mobilize the necessary financing. Then another important element is we are not only looking at renovation till 2030, but also in this case, there is a long-term perspective, a long-term vision of the European building stock by 2050 is provided in the recast of the EPBD, in particular with the introduction of the new definition of zero emission buildings, which will be the building the new standard for new buildings that supersede the existing nearly zero energy building, and basically represent the objective in terms of buildings for climate neutral building. Finally, there are a number of interlinkages also with other areas, in particular when we look at the sustainable mobility and at the deployment of e-charging point in private residential house. With that, we can move to the next slide, where I would like just to recall, because here I went over, let's say, the main text and the main policy area that informed the work of the Life CET program and the topic prepared under Life CET program. However, we shouldn't forget the interlinkage with the wider policy priority and areas. In particular, here I would like to recall the ongoing revision and negotiation on the revision of the electricity market design, in particular when it comes to energy system integration and demand flexibility element, but also the digitalization of the energy system. The Commission have proposed recently digitalization of energy system action plan with key measure, and under Life CET in some program you will see, in some topics you will see how digital is very much a digital solution, development of smart solution or enhancement of smart solution is very much present. Then finally, very importantly, we have come forward with the Net Zero Industry Act recently. Here we would like to scale up the production of net zero technology, heat pump, renewable, solar, energy efficiency technology in Europe. In this case, the important aspect with regard to Life CET, you know that very well, or you will discover that some of the elements, some of the topic from Life CET very much focus on the issue of skills and deployment. And in this case, we very much focus on the same technology, in the sense of, for instance, on heat pumps and the need to accelerate the deployment and reskilling for support the deployment of heat pumps in buildings or also in industrial or district facility or district heating. And finally, very important, financing and our work that we do with regard to activating, mobilizing, and mainstreaming private financing and interlinkage in this case with the financial reporting provision with the EU taxonomy and the capital requirement. Here is very, also in this case, you will find that there is a dedicated topic to activate private financing and how to integrate energy, a clean energy objective in the financial world. With this, I would like, I think I concluded my slide, and also my time I see is quite past. And with that, I mean, I invite you to follow the different session, to participate and ask questions. And really, like the role of the Live CET is really to support the European Union policy in this regard. So please apply, and we will be very happy to receive your contribution, and I look forward to it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Pierluca, for this overview. It's quite difficult to summarize in 15 minutes all the revisions of so important key pieces of legislation, but I recall participants that in each of the parallel sessions you will have a policy update as well with the specific elements of these policies that are more relevant for each of the topics. So please also participate in the parallel sessions. And with that, I pass the floor to Anette JAHN. Anette is working as a head of sector in CINEA with the Clean Energy Transition Sub-Program, and she will give us an overview of the Clean Energy Transition Sub-Program and the call 2023. Anette, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Maria, for the kind introduction. A very warm welcome also from my side to all of the participants. And thank you also, Aneta and Pierluca, for setting the scene. And I have the pleasure now to guide you through a very short, if you want, overview of the Live Energy, Clean Energy Transition Program. You've heard it, the whole day is dedicated to this program, and you have ample opportunity to visit each of the funding topics in a separate dedicated session. Here, within the space of a few minutes, I'm trying to give you an overview really of the whole of the program so that you can basically navigate afterwards, depending on your center of interest, depending on your center of expertise. Now, here a first introduction picture for those who know the LIFE program and basically the architecture of it, so that you can find us as the Clean Energy Transition Program is a fourth pillar of this program, which has been joining the LIFE program for the period of 21 and 27, for which the European Commission has set really a new landscape of European Union programs according to new and emerging political priorities. Now, for those of you who know us, our program has a long history. The latest identifier you would have found us under the Horizon Energy Efficiency umbrella, and now we've moved to the LIFE umbrella, really the dedicated European program addressing the Green Deal ambitions and objectives, and we'll outline in which way the contribution of the program is expected. Now, if you move to the next slide, here I'd like to just share a short word of background to the Clean Energy Transition Program, as we say, LIFE CET, in terms of its intervention logic, in terms of the mission that we are trying to fulfill. Pierluca, he mentioned already that the program is very closely reflecting and designed to really underpin the most pressing policy priorities at EU level. And therefore, the program is really considered as the key program for the clean energy policy implementation. And really, its main role is to help fill the gaps between the policy development and implementation. Now, this is probably all but more important with the recent significant changes in the EU legislation regarding the key pieces of energy policy. Pierluca kindly outlined them all, notably the Energy Efficiency Directive, the Renewable Directive, and the Performance of Building Directive, and of course, the contribution to Repower EU to respond to the hardship caused by the Russian invasion. And therefore, the LIFE CET activities are therefore really invited to break market barriers, which otherwise would risk to slow down the fast implementation of policy at all levels, and really allow a change of fundamentals by which markets and regulation operate. They're invited to improve governance, but also capacities at all levels. And very important, seeing the pressing need to move really the agenda towards implementation and to deployment in order to fulfill the climate targets, but also in view of our security concerns, they invite to mobilize investment and attract really private finance in large scale for sustainable energy in faster pace. So really, in short, innovative approaches to support directly a fast but also a high quality uptake of legislation and initiatives on the ground. That's basically the core mission of this program. Now moving to the next slide. Which other sectors in which the Life CET program is active in. And here, for a bit more of a concrete illustration, we are sharing with you simply the picture of our ongoing projects. So we have basically a whole broad landscape of about 300 ongoing projects which are hosted under our umbrella. And here you can really see, of course, very coherently the sectors which are indeed reflecting the key legislative initiative that Pierluca mentioned earlier. And here you can see the share of the important areas. For example, if we start on the top of the building renovation, building smartness, but also, of course, the growingly important area on heating and cooling, the work on industry and products. And then while you circle around the circle, you'll see also the work on more horizontal matters, such as mobilizing investment, attracting private finance for sustainable energy, the important work with cities and region, and of course, the work, the consumer and citizen-centric work. So that gives you a snapshot of the sectors in which the program is active in, and hopefully which also relays to your center of interest. Now moving to the next slide. Here, a quick picture on how LIFE operates in principle. Now, the program as such works on the basis of annual call for proposals. And we are today united in this room to talk about the call of the year 23. And all of the calls, however, they are based on so-called intervention areas. These are laid down in a multi-annual work program, which is valid for 5 years. So that's basically really the long-term vision or the midterm long-term vision of the thematic areas in which this funding program offers opportunities for support. The specificity of Life CET is, however, that the funding topics are actually adapted each year alongside the stakeholder needs, so your needs, but of course, notably alongside rapidly changing policy priorities. And hence, the program really has an agile side to it, while remaining, of course, very loyal to the 5 intervention areas, which gives you, as an interested party, hopefully, really a long-term view of the themes which are important in this program. Now, for this call, it was already mentioned earlier by Aneta, we have 13 topics which are open for your project ideas. And during the day, you'll, of course, have the benefit to visit any of those sessions where you will get really the details and tips and examples. And I now will take you over the next 2 slides over really a short overview journey, so that you basically have the whole architecture or the whole landscape that you can picture this, and basically then hopefully also navigate according to your interests. If we're moving to the next slide. Here we see the first 6 of the 13 funding topics shortly listed. So I'll take you shortly through this. In the first pillar on the left-hand side starting, we are looking at funding topics which nourish a national, regional and local policy framework. And here we're offering 3 funding topics. The first one is really dedicated to the work with the cities and regions. That it's technical support to the clean energy transition plans and strategies in municipalities and regions to really support the efforts in delivering and implementing the clean energy transition on the ground. And we know that cities and regions not only implementing, but often are in very innovative and ambitious traction targets that they're setting even ahead of EU planning, and hence they're really a very important ally in bringing the agenda forward. The second topic focuses mostly on national administration. Here we are giving direct support in the implementation of the key EU legislation pieces that Pierluca outlined. So again, the Renewable Directive, Energy Efficiency Directive, Building Directive, probably the topic ever so relevant so this year, as the legislation is undergoing significant changes, as we had the benefit of hearing earlier. The third topic really zooms into a very specific need to support the new European product registry for energy labeling. Moving to the next picture, which gives us then visibility of the second pillar. Here we're looking at facilitating investment at local and regional level, where the call offers really very interesting opportunities to stimulate the demand for an energy investment. And so we have two topics open. The first one groups really a whole work on giving support for the establishment of one-stop shops for integrated services, notably for building renovation, but also for businesses. And here basically setting up permanent one-stop shops, removing barriers, accelerate investment, and really cater for clients, for private homes, for public buildings, for large-scale rental units or small businesses, in order to have their complex decision processes in a much more facilitated way, and henceforth accelerate, for example, the renovation rate. The second topic, project development assistance, is our central topic to help project promoters to build and launch concrete large-scale investment pipelines into sustainable energy. Just a few buzzwords here, again, public buildings, private home, but also public infrastructure like district heating and cooling networks or urban mobility could benefit from grouping, bundling, aggregating large-scale investment. The third pillar, here we are moving to the other side of the market. Here we're looking at crowding really in private finance into these investment, either through the launch of innovative financing schemes or by making energy efficiency much more understandable to financial institutions. Now moving to the next picture. Here we see our second part of the 13 funding topics. The first pillar looks really at the centric work on citizen, with a funding topic on supporting work on alleviating household energy poverty or generic vulnerability across Europe. And then we have a second topic open, which is a fairly specific topic. This is basically calling for a new, novel, specific new energy community facility, which once it's up and running, will deliver small grants and dedicated services to support the very early phase of emerging energy communities. Here, this call actually calls for the setting up of the managing entity, which will run the facility, and in that way is a very specific and very novel instrument. Moving to the middle picture, here we look at the very important area, absolutely central in the policy landscape, and therefore also very central to the program, the area of building decarbonization and heating and cooling. The first topic addresses the actual energy performance of buildings. And when you see the title, probably to those of you working in this area, it tells us really the depth and the breadth of these opportunities here. We are looking at our actions which create the conditions to make renovations faster, deeper, smarter, service and data-driven. And I guess the title says it all. The third topic, second topic and third topic are looking at very important and very urgently growing important opportunities in the area of heating and cooling. The first one dedicated to district heating and cooling networks, looking at modernization of existing plants, but also improving the skills of operators, and a dedicated topic to facilitate the rollout of heat pumps across Europe, the key technology for our targets, but also to meet the objectives under Repower EU. Looking at quickly at the final pillar, number 6, here we are looking at the skills and capacity building, skills which are absolutely instrumental in order to deliver on the energy transition. And so for those of you working in this area, you would expect to see this, of course. The first topic, build up skills, is dedicated to the very necessary construction and renovation skills in order to deliver the building renovation, which offer the high performance that we are expecting and that we need. And the second topic is dedicated to the ecosystem of businesses, which have a very high potential. And here we're looking to notably strengthening the role of the energy audits, but also to foster collaborations between companies operating in the same value chain. Now that was obviously a very fast helicopter journey that I took you across the whole of the 13 funding topics. They will have time and ease and detail and examples in the dedicated sessions, but we hope that it gave you really the full complete picture of the program. And moving to the last slide. here really a few cornerstones that you would like to take away and which are valid for the whole of the call. Again, the deadline 16th of November, the budget of about 100 million euro, which is valid for about 60 grants. We've already, you'll see basically the loop from the start of the conversation this morning, policy-driven funding topics which have detailed guidance and which we really invite you to listen, to share the information, but also to study in order to see that your activities really are centered within the funding topic opportunities and their requirements, and already one horizontal information that most of the funding topics would require a collaborative approach across borders, so a minimum of 3 partners from 3 different eligible countries. There are a few exceptions for those funding topics which are very embedded in the local and regional constituencies, you will find out, but this you can take away as a general line for the program, and with a 95% co-funding rate. So these are the main cornerstones on which you will get a more detailed pictures now by our next colleagues. This is from my side. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'll hand back to Maria. Thank you.
Thanks, Anette. Quite a challenge to try to summarize 13 very specific topics in such a short time. But as already mentioned several times, you will have the opportunity to have topics in detail presented to you in the parallel sessions. And I pass the floor now to my colleagues, Zoe Wildiers and Ulrike NUSCHELER, Senior Project Advisors at CET, which will give us a presentation on some tips on how to do an excellent proposal. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. So indeed, with my colleague Ulrike NUSCHELER, we will give you some insights on the evaluation process, and we'll also give you some tips and lessons learned, because as you've understood, submitting a proposal is a competitive process, and it's not sufficient to just submit a proposal. It has to be very good, and why not excellent. So as you can see on the slides, we will guide you through a few things to remember. And if we look at the first element to remember is the timeline of the process. So here we would like to again remind you of the 16th of November deadline that you by now know, and we'd like to briefly explain to you what happens after that deadline. So once all proposals are received, they first are going to be checked for admissibility and eligibility. Once this check is positive, all the admissible and eligible proposals, they will be handed out to external experts who will do the assessment. So they will do that based on dedicated award criteria. I'll come back to that in a moment. After this evaluation process is over, we will inform the applicants. This brings us already to the month of March, mid-March or end of March. And then we have a phase of grant agreement preparation and then a signature of the grant, which happens at the maximum 9 months after the call deadline. So if you calculate all of this, this means that the grants will start in autumn 2024. So it's very important that you bear this in mind when you draft your proposal, so that you are aware that successful proposals will start around autumn 2024. So if we look at the next slide, you can have a print screen of the funding and tender portal. The funding and tender portal is basically the place where you will find all the relevant information to submit your proposal. So if you look for this specific live 2023 CET call, you will see that 13 topics are open. And for each topic, you will see the title and the topic description. So on the next slide, you can see better the heading of the topic description, which is then further broken down into objectives, scope, and the expected impact. So for each of the topics, for each of the 13 topics, you will find this information. So you first select the topic of your interest, and then you can go further and you will find all these headings. Below, you will find the topic conditions and documents, where you can find information on the application form, budget table, and so on. If we go to the next slide, you will find another header on this funding and tender portal, which is entitled call document. That's a very important one, because there you can find the call document of this specific call. This call document contains all the necessary information. You will find again there the details on the topic descriptions, the budget related information, also the timetable of the call, the admissibility and eligibility criteria, the award criteria, and even more information. So it's important that you look into this call document thoroughly. What's important to know as well is that it's a call specific document. So even if you've submitted a proposal in the past, the call document is really call specific. So make sure you go through the call document of this specific Live 2023 CET call. On the following slide, you can find some more information that you can see on the funding and tender portal. And these are the frequently asked questions. So for each topic as well, we are posting regularly frequently asked questions based on the questions you will raise today, be it in the plenary or in the parallel sessions, or questions that may come later on when you draft your proposal and that are valuable to all applicants. So we recommend you to regularly go and check there as well, because this is updated regularly. Then on the following slide, on the funding and tender portal, is also interesting to know you have some topic updates where you can find information on, well, soon after the application deadline is over, we will post information on the number of proposals that have been received per topic. And later on, when the evaluation phase is over, you will also find information on the evaluation results. So this gives you a little flavor of what you can find on this funding and tender portal, and we strongly recommend you to go there quite soon. Of course, on the funding and tender portal as well, you will find a start submission button where you can find the information with all the templates. I'll come back to that in a moment. And if we look at the next slide, you can see what a proposal looks like. So a proposal is composed of various parts. When you click on the start submission on the funding and tender portal, you will get to a new screen, and you will find what we call a part A, which is the first part you have to fill in. And there you can put administrative, well, you have to put the administrative information of your consortium. So it's directly completed in the system by you. Then we come to part B. Part B is a very important part. It is a Word template that you will download and that you will complete, and then you will have to upload it again as a PDF document. This is the narrative of your entire proposal, which is being evaluated by the external experts. It has a page limit, which for this call is set to 65 pages. So it's important that you use these pages wisely and that you respect them. So if you would upload the proposal with more than 65 pages, well, unfortunately, it will be cut at 65 pages, so the last pages won't be visible to anyone. The system is also warning you if this would be the case. In that Word document, you will see that there are instructions. It's expressly mentioned that you have to keep these instructions, so please keep them. If you remove them, because, for example, you would want to save some space, or if you would want to play with the font in order to gain some pages, unfortunately, this can have consequences on the admissibility of your proposal. So I would suggest you clearly not to do so. So remember, we have a 65-page limit. You have to keep the instructions, and the minimum font to use is Arial 10. So don't play with that because you'll have trouble with the admissibility of your proposal, which would be a pity because it won't be handed over then to the external experts for evaluation. The third part of your proposal is part C. It's also a part you complete directly in the system with the key performance indicators of your proposals. Then another compulsory part is the detailed budget table. You will find an Excel table that you will download, and in that page you have to clarify the different types of cost for each of the partners that you intend to have for your proposal. The last compulsory part is the participant information, in which you will upload all the information related to your consortium and maybe associated partners or affiliated entities. You will also see there's a possibility to have some optional annexes. You can also use that possibility typically for letters of support. And if you do so, they will be evaluated by the external evaluators as well. For some topic, it's possible that you have other annexes that are compulsory, like an investment table. Typically, I'm thinking of the PDA topic, but the colleagues of that session will explain that to you. So if we look at the next slide, you will see more in detail what Part B looks like. So you've understood that this is really the technical the description of your proposal. So this is the table of content of that specific part, based on 4 main headings entitled relevance, impact, implementation, and resources. So this is also how the award criteria are structured, as I will explain to you in a moment. So I mentioned to you that a proposal, in order to be evaluated, needs to be admissible and eligible. So if you look at the next slide, you will see exactly what makes your proposal admissible and eligible. Well, first, the admissibility is, well, we need to have your proposal submitted on time electronically through the system. We can't handle proposals submitted differently. So we really insist that you start submitting your proposal already in the system quite early. You can submit your proposal well before the deadline in the system, and you can overwrite your Part B or any other part until the very last minute. So we strongly encourage you to do so. Every year, unfortunately, we have applicants submitting the first version of their proposal at 5:01, 5:02, and clearly it's not appearing, it's too late, and we can't do anything. So it would be really a pity for you to be in that situation. So really do this well in advance, and you can, as I said, override till the very end. Make sure it's complete. So the system, as I said, will give you some warnings in case some pages, some sections are missing. But so in order to be admissible, all sections need to be completed. And of course, you need to respect the font size and the page limit. In order to be eligible, you need to respect the minimum consortium composition guidance. As Anette already said, for most of our topics, we're looking for consortia or of minimum 3 organizations from 3 different eligible countries. There are some exceptions which will be explained in the parallel sessions. Make sure the coordinator is coming from an eligible country as well. And of course, make sure the activities are in scope with the topic you've submitted it under. And then, of course, the geographic location needs to be in line with the one of the live program. If we go to the next slide, you can see how experts will evaluate the proposal in case it has passed the admissibility and eligibility check. So the experts, they will receive admissible and eligible proposal, and they will look at these and assess them based on the following award criteria. Here you can see we're working with 4 award criteria, and they all get a mark out of 20. So we're having 4 criteria: relevance, impact, quality, and resources. And as you see, they quite nicely match the structure of Part B, so the technical annex that you will be drafting. What's important to note as concerns the award criteria is that in order for a proposal to pass and later on maybe to be recommended for funding, that it needs a score of a minimum 10 out of 20 for each of the award criteria. And overall, the score needs to be minimum score of 55 out of 90. Now you say, well, if I add up 4 times 20, I have 80. How do you get to a total score of 90? Well, the reason is that the impact criterion is crucial. It's counting for 150%. So it will be marked out of 20, and then overall, well, we convert it in a score out of 30. And then you need to have a minimum of 55 out of 90. So I'll hand over to my colleague for the next slides.
Good morning. Yeah, next slide, I think. Good morning, my name is Ulrike NUSCHELER. Voilà. Yeah, I would like to go immediately into medias res on impacts. So one of the most challenging elements of the proposal writing is certainly the part on impacts and indicators. Is also the section that, together with the sections where you would explain the project idea and the concept, that receives most of the attention of the evaluators. As Zoe said, the impact section also gets a specific weight. It's that part in which you express the difference that your project makes. We have established the expected impacts for each of the topics, so you find it underneath, and your proposal then should establish exactly how the activity, your activity, contributes to those expected impacts. And you should do this by using indicators. Let's distinguish 3 levels of indicators that you see also on the slide. We have the topic-specific indicators, we have the activity-specific indicators, and we have the common indicators of the LiveSet subprogram. As you can see already in that graphic, the indicators ideally complement each other, and to some degree they might also overlap, but I'm going to explain this now. Next slide, please. Voila, here you see the 3 sections. So now zooming into these 3 levels of indicators, starting with the topic-specific indicators, which are really central on the left side. You find them under each of the topics, and depending on the breadth of the topic scope, they might be all relevant for your proposed activity or only partly. So you have to decide on a case-by-case basis which ones are relevant, and those that you find relevant, you need to address them really thoroughly. In addition to these topic-specific indicators, you see the activity-specific indicators. So you're encouraged to define activity-specific indicators yourself. So meaning indicators that are tailored to your specific activity, and that would express, on top of the topic-specific indicators, the impact of your activity. So this is also your chance to capture impacts that would not be automatically expressed in the topic-specific indicator. So it's more a chance than anything else. So thirdly, you see the common program indicators. So you find 4 of them under each topic. And they're the following: investments in sustainable energy, energy savings, renewable energy generation, and CO2 reduction. So these 4 common program indicators are part of the in total 11 LiveSet subprogram indicators that form part C, so part C, so mentioned these, of the application forms. And these common indicators might be fully or even partly covered in the topic-specific indicators. In that case, you don't need to completely duplicate your description. Next slide, please. For all 3 types of indicators, the following applies. The impacts that you present need to be credible. What does it mean to be credible? You need to present the starting point, the underlying assumptions, and also including the baselines and benchmarks, so how you calculated them. And this is absolutely crucial. You need to establish clear links between the activities you propose and the expected impacts that you establish. Second thing, we ask you to establish and quantify the results and impacts for the duration of the project, so until the end of the project, but also for the period of 5 years after the project end. Finally, on impacts, I already mentioned it, you are asked to fill in part C, which consists of 11 common LiveSet indicators. Please address those indicators that are relevant for your action. Later, but that only applies in case your proposal is selected, you would be asked to report your impacts also to new KPI. Well, it's not new, it's new for LiveSet KPI web tool. You can have a look at it at the website, but this is only really after your project or your proposal has been selected. Next slide, please. So now we have super valuable tips for you to succeed. Next slide, please. Well, the first one is an easy one. Start early, start now. Really don't wait, start now, not only because it takes a lot of time to develop a good project idea and translate it into a suitable set of actions, but also because for most of the topics, you will need to engage with a variety of partners with different roles and contributions from different countries, and that takes a lot of time. You will also need for most of the topics somehow pre-engage to some extent with stakeholders. So really don't wait. Next slide, please. Next one, the second tip also looks like an easy one. Read the relevant information. You will say that this is normal, this is self-understood, but still we often face ineligible proposals or proposals that are really not in scope of the work program. So please read carefully the topic text and the call documents, consult also the FAQs that Zoe mentioned and that are being published on the website. And have a look at the manuals. They really provide a really rich information that is that you might need and find useful. As Zoe said, also make really sure that you download the latest version of the application templates, as they might have changed from last year, or they usually change. Next slide, please. Third tip, choose your idea structured well, stick to it. Once you have a brilliant project idea that fits a call topic, define the starting point, explore the context that could context that might mean the policy context, the market context, but also the technological context. Define what your project will add or change, so define the delta and avoid duplication with other actions. Then translate the project idea and the objectives into operational steps, activities and tasks, and define the results. Define your target groups and think of how you will engage stakeholders. Think about what kind of partners you would need to have in a consortium deliver on the project objectives. And finally, establish your impacts just in line with what we just explained and link them to the activities that you want to carry out. Explain the difference that your project will make. This is the main thing. Next slide, please. Fourth tip, build a good consortium. As we all know, a project stands and falls with the consortium, and this is also something evaluators know. So the partners should be well complementary. Each member of the consortium needs to have a relevant role and needs to bring a relevant expertise or background. So it's useless to just add artificially partners and blow up the consortium. Really, each partner needs to have a specific role. And to be credible, the profile of the partners must match the tasks that they are foreseen to fulfill. The partner should be involved at an early stage of the proposal preparation, and ideally their input should be considered in a structured way. It's also essential that the partners have the capacity to reach out to stakeholders so that they will be taken seriously. For many topics, it's also essential to involve stakeholders either directly as partners or indirectly through other means like advisory boards or letters of support and so on. Next slide, please. First tip about the budget. Build up your budget and build it up bottom up, please. This means first define the tasks, allocate resources to each of the tasks, and then on this basis, calculate the budget. Check regularly that there's consistency of the allocation of the resources across tasks and across partners. Partners do not need to have all similar shares of resources. This is a wrong assumption, but the resources need to reflect their role in the project. That said, each partner should also have sufficient resources to be properly involved and stay committed. So if you have partners that have a too tiny role, it's difficult to keep them on track and engaged. Note that under LiveSet, we do not cover infrastructure costs. We mainly support labor costs, so we say brain, not bricks. As regards to equipment costs, they can be funded under certain conditions, exceptionally, and to a very limited extent, and that would need to be justified, but in principle, it's possible. Next slide, please. So when you write your proposal, create a thread. In German, it would be red file or fil rouge. So a leitmotif in your proposal, meaning fine-tune your objectives, make them at your target group, think about the methodology you want to apply, meaning the single steps from the starting point to the end point, and the interlinkages between the different tasks. Think about what you want to disseminate, to whom and how. Moreover, of course, please do read the guidance. I mean, Zoe has explained this in detail, and respect the instructions, please. Next slide. And I think that's also my last one, final polishing. Foresee enough time to fine-tune and polish your proposal. This includes to check, of course, the completeness of the proposal. Once again, check the consistency between your activities and the budget. Ask, that would be ideal, and informed outsider for critical reading and feedback, because another pair of eyes always sees more. And if you have a chance, try to involve a native speaker to have a last look at the English. So that's from my side. And I would hand over to Zoe again.
Yeah, so before closing the presentation, I still would like to go through a few lessons learned and present some information sources. As you can see on the next slide, on the lessons learned, is to be really focused. You will see that for quite a few topics, you have the option to address one, sometimes more topics and areas as well. So read carefully what is written. If it's mentioned that it's sufficient to address one of the scopes, don't try to artificially address a bit of everything and to remain very superficial. So really be focused, read carefully what's expected from the topic, and use also your 65 pages that you have in your technical part B. Use them wisely, as I already said. Make sure to be concrete in the activities you present. Avoid repetitions and high-level superficial descriptions. Make sure that the activities you propose have a very clear starting point and explain clearly the context and show that you're knowledgeable of what's happening out there. Make sure that the activities you propose credibly lead to concrete achievements and impacts. As Ulrike explained, is very important. And as you know, it's worth 150% in the award criteria. So make sure these are really properly explained, detailed, realistic, and that the actions clearly lead to the impacts you're expecting. As also mentioned by Ulrike, the stakeholder engagement is very important, needs to be clearly explained and targeted. So you could involve the stakeholders through having them in the consortium or also through the letters of support. Just bear in mind that letters of support as such, I mean, don't mean anything. Some can be very vague, just like I'm interested in the project is not going to show a very clear stakeholder engagement. So just make sure of the wording that's in there as well. Before we close, a few sources of information on the next slide. You will find, as said already by Aneta, all the recordings and presentations of today later on the CINEA website. If you have questions after listened to the sessions, after having gone through the call document, then our suggestion is really to contact your NCP, your national contact point. So we've met with them recently. They're really keen and motivated to help you to submit a very good proposal. So we have national contact points in the various countries participating in the LIFE program, so don't hesitate to get in touch with them. If you haven't found any answer yet, we have a functional mailbox you can use. Here we also put a few information sources like portals, Cordis, database, you have the build-up portal, manage energy portal, and clearly we would strongly recommend you to register to our newsletter, which regularly gives you information on what's happening in the LIFE program. As a very last slide, if at the end of the day you realize that, well, you are not planning to submit a proposal, not for this call, not for this year, but you have valuable expertise and maybe you could work for us as an independent evaluator, then I can guide you through the funding and tender portal where you can find a heading work as an expert, where you can upload your CV, and who knows, maybe you will be contacted and contracted to evaluate proposals of this call. We hereby thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Ulrike and Zoe, for this overview with all the tips on how now we know everything we need to know on how to make a very successful LIFE clean energy transition proposal. And now I pass the floor to our colleague Licinia Pereira. She's a financial manager at CINEA, and she will present main financial elements that you have to take into account if you want to apply for a LIFE clean energy transition. Licinia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I hope after all these tips, you're still with full attention. So I don't know, I don't see the presentation. Thank you. So before I start, I'd just like to say that this presentation is just a summary of the presentation that was given on the Info Day on the 25th of April. So I strongly invite you, if you were not in the Info Day on the 25th of April, that you have a look at that presentation, because here it's a summary and it's concentrating on the CET specificities. And also the aim of the presentation is really to give you also further tips, but on the financial side, that you really create a successful proposal. And I will be also during the presentation thinking of some questions that we received on the info day, and I'll be just adding some little more information. Next slide, please. So first, I would like to start really with the reference documents that you need to. Sorry, somehow I cannot see full screen. Okay, I still don't see my present in the, but it's okay. Okay, just 1 second, please. Okay, that's better. So here are links to the reference documents that we really invite you to have a look at if you haven't had the chance yet. So the general annotated grant agreement has been revised on the 1st of April. And here you really have, so the model grant agreement and all the interpretations for the different articles that you will have in your grant agreement. And also the last one, the rules on legal entity validation and financial capacity assessment. If you are wondering if you're a new entity in EU funding and you're going to be the coordinator and you're wondering, do I have the financial capacity to lead an action, or will I be assessed weak? And then normally you will be asked for a financial guarantee. Well, go to the portal and make a self-assessment, and this will already give you some preparation for the next steps in your proposal. Next slide, please. Here is the type of roles that you might have in your grant agreement. So basically you will have a coordinator. The coordinator is our main link. The coordinator will sign the grant agreement. The beneficiaries are also then your partners, those that will be majorly involved in the action, and they will also sign the grant agreement through the accession forms. Then you have affiliated entities. So these are entities that are legally or through capital linked to one of the beneficiaries. They will be, of course, participating in the action. You will have to indicate what they will be doing, and they will be also included in the budget, but they will not sign the grant agreement. And the responsibility for the affiliated entities lies with the beneficiaries. Then you have associated partners. So associated partners, this is something new in the new program now. They will be involved in the action. They want to be involved in the action. They want to do some activities. However, they will not declare any costs and not receive any EU funding. Okay, and of course they will not sign the grant agreement either. You will have subcontractors if you are thinking of subcontracting some of the action tasks. In life, financial support to third parties is not normally foreseen. And then you have in-kind contributions. So in-kind contributions are organizations, entities that are going to give you something, but for free. And as this is for free, this will not be taken in consideration in the budget, either in the cost side or the income side. And this is already one of the first questions that we get from candidates is, what's the difference between associated partners and in-kind contributors? Well, the difference is that associated partners, even though they're also not involved in the budget, they have a concrete action to do. They are involved, whereas in-kind contributors are normally entities that provide something. For example, the space of an office, and they give you the rent for free. Okay, next slide, please. So what do you need to establish your budget? Well, you have the part A, where you have a summarized budget, and this you need to indicate. You need to fill in the system per beneficiary and affiliated entity. The associated partner will have no costs, and then you have the detailed budget. So in the detailed budget, you will have all the cost categories that we will discuss later on. And here you will have to provide enough justification, enough description for us to evaluate if these costs are eligible or not. Please don't forget to put the staff effort for the associated partners. Next slide, please. So how do you establish your budget? Sorry, I'm just doing something. Yes, here we go. Sorry for this, I'm having some difficulties with the screen. So first of all, check the call text and read what is eligible, what is not eligible. This has already been mentioned by my previous colleagues. Everything needs to be in euro. Indirect costs, you know that normally a flat rate of 7% is allowed, except volunteers and lab purchase. If you have an operating grant, then normally these are not eligible unless you can demonstrate in your accounting system that the operating grant does not cover any costs of the action grant, okay? Then you have unit costs. This is something a little bit tricky, but in the Annex 2A of the model grant agreement, you will see that there's a description on how to calculate them. Okay, I will invite you to do that. And I also add here the link for the specific coefficient per country for calculating the SME owner unit costs. Next slide, please. So set specificities. You know that the co-funding rate is at 95%. And one of the questions from the last info day on the 25th of April was, is it possible to co-finance the rest with another EU project? The answer is no. Why? Because we consider that the EU funding at 95% is for overall all the EU institutions, be it, Cohesion Fund or Horizon Europe or anything. So we see it as globally. So the other 5% in this case will have to be own resources or other funding, but not from EU institutions. Okay. The payment conditions are typically, so if you get a grant from us, you will receive the first pre-financing at 30%, and then the further pre-financings, and then the final payment. Specifically for the Enercom facility topic, you would get a pre-financing also of 30%, but instead of further pre-financings, you would get interim payments and then the final payment. And what does this mean, this difference, further pre-financing, interim payment? A further pre-financing is made when, after you reach the end of the reporting period, we will give you a certain amount, normally 50%, but it depends on the consumption of your previous pre-financing, which needs to be normally at 70%. And so there's no verification of costs. This is something already predefined, if you will. In case of interim payments, this is based on the incurrence of costs. So here there is an evaluation of the costs, and the reimbursement is 95% of these costs that you have incurred, of course, always with a maximum of 80% of the grant agreement. Next slide, please. Here we look into the eligibility of the costs. This is Article 6 in the Model Grant Agreement. And so if you have doubts if a cost is eligible or not, come here and have a look. So these costs need to be incurred by you, the beneficiary or the affiliated entity, and during the project. And here, of course, with the exception of the final reporting or the audit, if you would need to provide one at the end. And here I also come to one of the questions that we normally get. Does it mean eligible if it's paid when we are looking at being incurred during the duration of the project? Actually not. Of course, the costs need to be paid because they need to be incurred. They need to be a cost for you. But the duration of the project means that it's when the cost really happened. So if it's works, it's when the works took place. So for example, when a bridge was built. If it's a service, is when the service was rendered. And if it's consumables, it's when these consumables were delivered. Okay, so this is also another tip. Another criteria, it needs to belong to the budget categories of the call. So it needs to be foreseen in your grant agreement. It needs to be directly related to the action and necessary for the implementation, identifiable, verifiable, and in your accounts. Okay, so if you get an audit afterwards, you need to be able to prove that you really have it in your accountancy, that it really is a real cost. It needs to comply with applicable national laws on taxes, labor, and social security. And finally, reasonable, justified, and comply with the principle of sound financial management. So this means that if we find a cost which is not justified or excessive, we reserve the right to reject this cost. Next slide, please. So direct costs, what are these direct costs? So these are costs that are directly connected to the action necessary for the implementation. So this is not indirect costs. This is not the 7% of these direct costs. And you can see here the categories, personal costs, and here I will go through all the subcategories, subcontracting costs, then purchase of costs, travel, subsistence, equipment, other goods, works, and services, and then other costs category, which normally are not allowed for CET, with the exception of the intercom facility topic, where financial support to third parties is allowed with a maximum of 60,000 per third party. Next slide, please. So here are personal costs. So I would say the most common one is number one, cost for employees or equivalents. And here you include everything which is usual in your organization. So salaries, social security contribution, taxes, and other costs linked to remuneration. Natural persons or seconded persons. So they are working under direct contract other than an employment contract, or they are seconded persons by a third party against payment. And these are eligible if the work conditions are similar though to those of an employee and the result of the work belongs to the beneficiary. And this applies also, for example, for working conditions for teleworking or going to the office and working. So the conditions need to be similar. Fourth category, SME owners or natural persons not receiving a salary. This is very important. So not receiving a salary. If they are receiving a salary, then they will be in A1. And then A5, volunteers. So what are volunteers? Volunteers are persons who work freely for the organization. It's not compulsory and very important, they are not getting any payment. So this is very important. So actually, this is the only not real cost that you will have if you have volunteers. And the purpose is that it helps you a little bit to achieve a little bit more EU funding. That's the purpose of it. But there is no real payment. There is no transfer. And these are also calculated on the basis of unit costs. Next slide, please. So here we are looking into how do you calculate your personal costs. And here, this is totally new in relation to the legacies. So please go into the annotated grant agreement. There you will have loads of information on how to make these calculations and also to the presentations that we have done in the past. So basically you take the annual salary cost, you divide it by 12 and the number of day equivalents that you can budget per person per year cannot be higher than 215. Okay, this is a new rule. It's a simplification rule, and we all have to comply. I mean, remembering that there's 365 days in the year, if you take out holidays and if you take out some sick leaves or other reasons for being absent, 215 days is judged to be a very good number of days that you can then declare as your staff costs. Then The costs for natural persons or seconded personnel must be based on the contract or the secondment rate that you have stipulated, but they cannot be significantly different from those personnels already working and doing similar tasks in your organization. Next slide, please. So here is just how you calculate the SME owner's unit costs and the volunteers. I won't go into details, just that it's in Annex 2A. I would just say that for volunteers, there's additional criteria that you have to comply to, and they are here indicated. So maximum 50% of the total project costs and contributions. Maximum EU contribution cannot be higher than the total eligible costs without volunteers. It's a very different concept. My tip would be, put this formula in an Excel table if you have doubts, and you're on the safe side. And then at reporting, you cannot exceed what was already foreseen in your grant agreement. Okay, next slide, please. So now I move into subcontracting. So subcontracting and purchase of cost, there's sometimes the gray area. What you need to retain is that it's really about hiring another entity or experts to do an action task. So a main action in your project. It needs to fulfill, of course, all the general eligibility conditions that I have just mentioned. You need to follow your usual purchasing practices. You need to ensure that there's best value for money and no conflict of interests. It can only cover part of the action unless it is properly justified. And if you are a contracting authority or entity, then you must also comply with EU public procurement. Next slide, please. So here we just give you some examples of what is subcontracting and what is contract and purchases. And here, typically, purchases concern travel, equipment, other goods and services. So activities or services that you need to implement the work, but are not an action task. Okay. And of course, you will need to separate these costs then in the detailed budget when you're submitting, when you're filling in your proposal in the system. And we give you some examples here as well. If you have doubts, put it in subcontracting. Next slide, please. Here, travel and subsistence, so not much to say, just that you need to follow your usual practices. On equipment for set actions, only the depreciation is allowed. So it needs to be actually incurred costs and written off in accordance with international accounting standards and your usual accounting practices. So don't do anything differently, just follow your usual accounting practices. Only the portion of the costs that correspond to the actual rate of the action. So if you have already something bought and you're depreciating, well, the depreciating of this equipment before the project starts or after it ends is not eligible. I think that would be clear. And then costs for renting or leasing should not exceed the depreciation costs of similar equipment if you are thinking of doing this. Next slide. So other goods, works, and services. So these typically include consumables, supplies, campaigns, promotion, dissemination, translation, publications, certificates on financial statements, financial guarantees if they are required under the agreement. A word on the CFS. So a certificate on the financial statements is necessary when your requested EU contribution is higher, equal or higher than 500,000, per beneficiary and affiliated entity, and each time is reached. So normally for CET actions, this would be at the final payment. For the ENECOM facility, when there is interim payments, is also applicable at the level of interim payments. Next slide, please. So we've discussed what is eligible. Now I will give you some examples of what is not eligible. By the way, this is also in your model grant agreement. So dividends, just to name a few, we've had some questions on the VAT. So only deductible or refundable VAT is not eligible. If it's non-deductible or non-refundable, then normally it is eligible, okay? And in-kind contributions are not eligible. Next slide, please. So what I've mentioned already in the beginning, we cannot have double funding. So so in this case, the 5% that you will need to cover cannot come from other contributions of EU grants. Okay, this is not eligible. Costs on contributions for staff or national regional administrations for activities that are already part of the administration's normal activities, okay, or costs on contributions for staff or representatives of EU institutions, you know. So you cannot reimburse our costs, basically. And costs which are, of course, specifically declared as ineligible in the call. Something that also came up in the info day, one of the questions is what records need to be maintained for unit costs. And in this case, you need all the documentation that proves how you calculate these unit costs, how many. And since these are related to salary costs, you would also be advised to keep timesheets or any other way that you use to record how SME owners or volunteers have worked in your action. Of course, they have to be attributed to your action. And I will leave it at that and remain available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Licinia, for this this overview. As she said, there is a more long, extensive presentation on financial issues, also followed by a question and answer session that is recorded from the Info Day, the General Life Info Day in April. So you can also look at that source of information, as many of your questions will be answered probably on that recordings. Now we have a few minutes before the break for answering some of the questions that we got from Slido. We have the time to answer 2 or 3 questions, but of course, as mentioned before, you can also address the questions to the national contact points or to the functional mailbox, but also the specific, very topic specific questions can be also answered in the parallel sessions later on. So if we can show on the screen the Slido questions, I can have a look and see. Okay, I see there is a question regarding 95 co-funding rate and what can be funded. We have Anne Vermalen, Head of Sector working on financing for the LIFE program. So Anne, maybe I think you're in the best position to answer to this question. What it means 95% co-financing in LIFE CET? The specific questions is related to personal costs, but I think you can provide a very comprehensive answer. Thank you.
Yes, in fact, what we will do is we will take all the eligible costs of your grant and we will multiply this with 95%. This is the maximum rate that we can reimburse of this cost. The remaining 5% will need to be covered either by your own funding, by third-party funding, or by income generated by the project.
Okay, so very clear. So it's 95% of all eligible costs. Thanks, Anne. Another question from Slido, if I can see the screen. Yes, can a proposal address more than one topic? I think, maybe Zoe, a call coordinator, can you answer the question? Thank you.
Yes, I can take that one. So as I showed you on the print screen on the funding and tender portal, the first thing you have to do is really to choose a topic under which you are submitting the proposal. So the answer here is no. You have to submit a proposal under a specific topic. So really make sure that your proposal matches the topic you submitted under. Otherwise, it may be considered as out of scope, and then, as I said, cannot be handed out to the evaluators for evaluation.
Yes, so only submit a proposal under only one topic. The topics are very specific, and you really have to propose something in accordance to the topic call text.
And maybe I can add as well, be cautious. It's not because something was rightly submitted under one topic last year that it would still be relevant and eligible this year. Proposals, and topics are evolving call after call. So really make sure you have a look at the call document and at the funding and tender portal.
Yeah, indeed, the topics that are evolving. Some of them are changing, and others are adding new elements in view of the new political priorities. So yes, be careful with the resubmissions, because I think sometimes proposals tend to resubmit without addressing shortcomings identified in the previous evaluation, or even without addressing the new elements of the topic. So please have a look at the topic specificities in each call topic text. Thanks. We have Slido. Yes, I have my screen super small, so I don't read it very well. I think it is related to a solar park in the clean energy transition, whether this can be supported by a LIFE program. Looking at the question like that, I will say no. So as said very clearly, we are a policy support program. We are not an infrastructure focused program, so we cannot expect with the project support a specific solar park in a specific region or in a specific city in Spain. What we are doing with our topics is trying to accelerate, facilitate, change market fundamentals, address market barriers that can facilitate the uptake of these technologies, of new approaches and services to facilitate the energy transition. So we cannot find the specific solar park in a specific region, but the projects will try to set up the conditions so to make this type of investments easier. That's the question. So no, not as such. No, it's not eligible. Yes, and I think last question. Yes, it's a very specific question, I think, on reskilling, upskilling of PVs submitted under the WILLAP topic, or where else? Yes, I'm sorry, I cannot read it very well. So, but basically, all these questions will be they can be asked in the specific sessions. So I suggest that the person asking these questions follows the session on buildings and building skills. But I will say that from my side, that just a proposal that is addressing reskilling, upskilling of PV installer, it's the best place is the build-up topic of this year. But please follow the session for knowing the specificities of the topic. And I think that's all from my side. As I said, there are many other questions. You can address them to the national contact points. You can also send them to the Life Inquiries mailbox. And you can also address them in the parallel sessions this afternoon. So the next sessions, the next 3 parallel sessions will start at 11:15. And you are welcome to address the specific questions there. And sorry about the small delay. I hope you enjoyed this first plenary session, and I hope that you will keep on enjoying the full day that we have prepared for you with the specific sessions for the specific topic. So that's all from my side. Remember that you will have the recordings available and the presentations will be available. And also there is the recordings available for the long session on financial issues that was given at the end of April for the General Life Info Days, where you have a lot of information on financial questions, and most of your questions will be answered there. So that's all from my side. So I hope to see all of you in the next parallel sessions at 11:15, and then on the following ones that we have until later this afternoon. Thanks a lot, and thanks a lot to the colleagues who participated in this plenary, and thanks to all of you for the active participation in Slido, and see you in the next sessions. Thank you.